Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here, coming at you with another Rise of Shadows card review. We're getting some really good ones here. Typically, the card reveals tend to wind down a little bit to the end, but not so. We're getting some insanely powerful cards revealed lately. All right, let's kick it off here. We got Big Bad Archmage. He is big and he is bad. 2 stars. It's pretty simple rating for me. We've seen cards that are much better than this. You know, possibly you would think that this effect, you can draw some synergy, you know, maybe with Khadgar, maybe there's other effects that, you know, have influence over summoned things. The problem is it's a 10 mana card. It's really hard to get any real synergy out of anything that costs 10 mana. If you want to compare this to something like, I don't know, Ragnaros that does like 8 or something, and it's a higher body and stronger effect. Typically, it's not a good idea to underestimate cards with recurring effects, but it's a 10 cost card, and it's quite a bit worse than what we've seen in the past. So it's really competitive. You know, the face value of this card, it's not like really the worst card ever. You're going to see this in Arena. It's going to be really crazy. In some cases, it's going to be a really good card in some other cases, but at the core, the high mana cost minion contest is really competitive. So I think this guy just is not going to make the cut in most of these decks. That's about it. Next up, we have Desperate Measures. Twin spell for Paladin, cast a random Paladin secret. You have to immediately play it, but it's, it's random. It's like totally random. It's not even like discover random. So the idea is a pretty interesting one. Your opponent literally can't know what to play around. It's going to force him to go through the cycle of secrets, and there's quite a bit of value in that. I think this card is actually pretty good. There's not a lot of synergies through just, casting secrets rather than playing secrets. There's very little in that department. So, synergy-wise, it might not even belong in a Secret Paladin deck. As such, it's kind of difficult to fit in the deck. That's why I'm going to give it 3 stars. It's a pretty high power level card, but it's a very tough fit synergy-wise for Constructed. For Arena, this card will appear to be a lot better because, well, there basically is no synergy when you play Arena. And with this card, you're going to get the full power of it, and the power level is pretty good. Then we have one of the craziest cards yet. We have Tuck, Rogue Legendary. Okay, it's a 7 cost 6/6, and when you shuffle a card into your deck, you add a copy of it to your hand. Now, there's a decent number of shuffle mechanics in the game right now, but there is one that is particularly devastating, okay? And it is one that they actually highlighted in the reveal of this video. It's the go-to card. It's basically you play Tuck, then you play Preparation, then you play Academic Espionage. It puts 10 1-cost cards in your deck, and basically if you have Tuck, it basically puts those 10 cards in your hand. And that's an 8 mana combo, so you can even play 2 of them. Yes, they do cost 1 mana when they're in your hand. They also give you the advantage of what cards are shuffled into your deck. Normally you don't know that. So it actually, not only does it, have crazy synergy, it amplifies the power level of that card. I would say that combo is so strong, it is not quite as good, but almost comparable to Win the Game. It's so hard to lose from that position. That combo is just devastatingly strong. As such, if you're playing kind of like Steel Rogues, and we've seen some incentives to actually play Steel Rogues, that might just be a natural fit in that deck. You might be playing a value-based rogue deck with high tempo cards with an I win the game button. That's pretty strong. That is not a small deal. So I'm going to give Tuck 5 stars. I think he really has a big influence in an archetype of rogue that seems to be shaping up really well, particularly with Tuck involved. Another legendary, we have a neutral one, Archmage Vargoth, 4 cost 2/6. At the end of your turn, cast the spell you've cast this turn. Targets are random. Now, with spells that, we've had spells, triggers that, recast spells or do something synergistic with spells. And typically, when it comes to random spells, a really good candidate is secrets, because secrets, well, they don't have random targets. So you just play a secret. But the problem is, this guy has anti-synergy with secrets. Secrets you can't cast the same secret twice, and you can't trigger the secret you just played on your own turn because secrets don't trigger on their own turn. So it's pretty difficult to really see an extraordinary use for this card. I'm going to give it 3 stars as such. It is a high power level card, and I'm sure we will find some kind of home for the card. Maybe not in this expansion, maybe in a future one. It's a high power level card. He just really struggles to see consistent fit in a deck with the current card pool. But again, maybe we missed something, or maybe the following expansions really have a big influence on his options. And we have a few Druid cards here. Dreamway Guardians, 2-cost, summon 2, 1/2 Dryads with Lifesteal. In my opinion, this is a 4-star card. I don't think it'll be like game-breaking, meta-defining, but it'll be pretty close. It's obviously a very strong card. We've had summon effects for Druid, 1-cost summon 2 1/1s, that sort of thing. That seems to work out for Paladin even. This is 2-cost summon 2 1/2s with Lifesteal, and Lifesteal's pretty relevant. But just stat-wise, it's a 2-cost 2/4, and it's across multiple bodies, which is an advantage if you're playing Druid because of the global buff spells and synergies and bursts and all that Druids have available. Also, we've seen that Heal Druid, and we'll see soon enough just how crazy that gets. Heal Druid has an even larger archetype attached to it, so the Lifesteal may be extremely important. So it's a very good card, possible highly synergistic, but we'll have to see how that works out because the card itself kind of suggests a more aggressive nature. So Lifesteal, might be a bit of a tough fit in the Heal Druid deck, but we'll have to see. Next up, we have Lifeweaver, which pushes the archetype quite a bit, I would think. Lifeweaver is, in my opinion, a 4-star card once again. Very high power level card. It's a 3-cost 2/5, which not even that long ago was a pretty satisfactory stat line for Constructed. Didn't break the game, but was actually playable. 3-cost 2/5s are not bad. And this ability is whenever you restore health to anything, to any minion or yourself or anything, even 1 health restored, you add a random Druid spell to your hand, and you know what? Some of those Druid spells, they restore health. So you might be able to get a pretty long chain of spells and health restorations, kind of triggering a bit of like a Lyra effect. Extremely powerful if you consider the fact that it's a very well statted 3-drop, and 3-drops are, there's not that many great 3-drops at any time in Hearthstone. So this card's really good. Maybe even 5 stars, but the other issue is we don't know how the balance of healing and pushing on the board will really work out. I'm not entirely sold on the consistency of that deck versus others, but I think it's a very strong 4-star card. Call to Adventure is a new Paladin card. This one is a bit tough to evaluate in terms of, the card just at face value. Cards that draw cards that cost 3 should draw you 2 cards. This draws you 1 card, and it's typically about 2 mana for an extra card draw. So it's kind of like you're drawing a card for the 1 mana and you're buffing something, but specific something, the one that you drew, for +2/+2. Now, it doesn't seem like that is a very powerful effect, but there is the Immortal Prelate that might be your only 2-cost minion in the deck, and granting that a buff can be very powerful. So, possibly very synergistic. The main issue is that type of deck, although powerful, basically instantly dies to silence or silence removal. So it's a tough sell. Getting a specific minion has some and potentially some large advantages, but it's a tough sell so far into the meta. I think it's at best a 3-star card, but I'm going to give it 2 stars because I've tried the archetype and I don't have as much hope for it as some others. I think it's a 2-star card, but some things can certainly change if, the meta shifts away from silence removal, and that's possible, but with some of the reveals we have here in a second, you'll see probably unlikely. Underbelly, Fence, new rogue card, following with more steel mechanics. Basically, it's a 2-cost 2/3, which is playable, by the way. It is playable as it is on turn 2, but you're playing rogue. On turn 2, you can just hero power and get the value for holding a card from another class. You get +1/+1 and rush. That's a 2-cost 3/4 rush. That's crazy. You lose tempo generating cards from other classes in the rogue archetype. Not a lot of tempo, by the way, but you lose a little bit of tempo doing that. But we've started seeing these cards that gain that tempo back. These are the key cards that make this archetype work. I think Underbelly Fence is actually a 5-star card. It does define the archetype. One thing I've also learned is that cards that generate cards from other classes in this expansion actually generate them from other classes, not necessarily your opponent's class. So if you're playing in the Rogue mirror, if Rogue is the end-all be-all of that archetype, of that meta, this will still be playable. It'll still be really good. I don't see much of a disadvantage of this card at all. It's insanely high power level, and it pushes that archetype probably what we've had so far close to or near the top of the meta. Lucentbark, new Druid legendary. Holy crap. It's an 8-cost 4/8. We have to keep in mind the attack value for a taunt just has to be good enough. It doesn't have to be Iron Bark. It doesn't have to be an 8/8 taunt for this to be good for 8 mana. Because a taunt just to eat that damage, just absorb that damage, right? So Lucentbark is a 8-cost 4/8, which is generally weak stats. If you're playing this card, you'd probably want it to cost like 6 mana, be outstanding at 5, be broken at 5. But it's probably about a 6 mana. But when it dies, it goes dormant, and if you restore 5 health, it comes back to life. It's the shares in effect. But it's on a taunt, and it has kind of synergy. You're playing an extremely defensive deck. There are additional synergies through healing. This card is 5 stars. This card is unbelievable. And let me sell you guys on the idea here. So, yes, there's not like a whole lot of ways to restore 5 health and all that, but you can get there. There's a lot of different ways where you can restore a little bit of health. There's some new cards that restore health. But if you get this card going, it just is completely out of control. I don't think this is like, the #1 meta card ever, but it's certainly very good. The idea is you play this, you play some healing, but it's really easy to copy cards. The problem with like shares and cards like that in the past that had this effect is they didn't have taunt. This has taunt. It comes back with taunt, more taunt. Activate it, gain health, more defensive, more taunts. Now, think about having multiple copies of it. That's really where things get crazy. You can like faceless it for 5. There's other ways to get copies out there. It gets really out of control. If you have 2 of these, your opponent has to get through both. Then you restore 5. Then you get 2 back. It's just like game over at that point. But no, there's more than that. If just the one dies 3 times, you can play the Undertaker. And then if the Undertaker dies, you can get 3 copies of Lucentbark after you heal. The Undertaker's Death Rattle doesn't copy Undertaker. We've had dev confirmation that it actually spawns a Lucentbark. So it's just, the synergy is there. The main problem is how common is silence removal. Now, I posted that I think this card is totally insane on Twitter. Please follow, by the way, at Kripparrian. I tweet a lot. I posted this card's totally insane, and one of the top players in the game basically said, yeah, but, you can just silence it. It's like, yeah, but we've had like Void Lord. You can't call Void Lord bad because you can just silence it. Of course you can silence anything. It just depends how often those silence effects can be played in any given meta. And if they can't be played that frequently, then this card is out of control. And if they can't be played very frequently, maybe you can create a Druid deck that plays a whole bunch of stuff that all needs silencing to a point where you can just get away with winning off of those cards because they're going to save their silence for your Lucentbark. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and this is certainly one of the front runners of the expansion, in my opinion. New Warlock card, 6-cost 4/6. It has taunt. When you draw this, restore 4 health to your hero. It's a very nice effect. It's a demon for whatever that really matters. We're not getting to keep the Death Knights, so it doesn't really matter so much anymore. Paying for this minion, you'd want it to cost like 5, so for the 1 extra mana, you gain 4 health. Is that good? Yeah, it's pretty good. Gaining health is typically not to be underrated in Hearthstone, and it's pretty common that a Warlock will be missing health at any point in the game because you use your health as a resource more so than the other classes. So it's a pretty good card. I'm going to give it 3 stars. I don't think it's like absolutely crazy or anything like that, but if the game ever enters a hyper aggro state, this is going to be one of the staples to counteract that. So it's certainly not bad. It's just not a card I'd include in like every Warlock deck or anything like that. And finally, we have Dimensional Ripper. It's a 10-cost warrior card that summons 2 copies of a minion in your deck. It's basically like Recruit, and you get 2 instead of the 1. We've had Recruit 1 for 6. That saw a little bit of play, but not a whole lot, and the deck rarely ever got even into the tier 2 bracket, so it's a tough sell. Experience has taught me that this card is not particularly powerful. Nevertheless, I think it'll probably see some play. Recruit Warrior is still going to be about as good as it was before, so I'm going to give it a 3-star rating. It's a pretty good card in a pretty good deck. Nothing game-breaking, not bad, certainly fun, and certainly going to create some highlights. Hope you guys enjoyed this review. Make sure to check out the ones before, and stay tuned for more.